Yeah, guys, I think we can start. So this is the part two. So in the part one, you might see about all these things once again. We saw about how to create a API and how to call that API using the Postman and all these things, as you can see here. Okay. So now in this video or in this live, we are going to see how to connect the database and how we can able to get the data, how we can able to update the data, delete the data. All these things we are going to see in this live. Okay. And now okay, so all these APIs I'm just creating only for okay, I can keep, maybe I can keep this thing, the endpoint I will keep as it is. Maybe I will change the response. Okay, so the response whatever you are getting, right, that is not in the proper format. As I mentioned, REST API means the data should be in the appropriate format. We cannot send whatever the message that we want. It should be in the appropriate key and value. So key and value means, if you know the Java, we know hash map, right? Hash map, it should be key and value, right? The same way, when it comes to a response, we need to send it in the format of JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So by the name, you don't get confused that we should know the JavaScript to understand the JSON. That's not the scenario. JSON means it's like a key and value pair. Okay, so key should be some common thing. Value should be whatever the message we want. For example, you want to send a response to the client, means we can mention like this. Okay, so this is a response, which means this is the object here. So in this object I can mention like, okay, I think it's giving like this. Okay, so here I can mention like message and a colon, and I want to send like sample response. Okay, so whenever the client wants to access the message, they can easily, okay, they can easily access this message parameter, which is the key, and whatever the message that you are posting, that they can able to extract that message, right? So here what we can do, maybe just for example I'm using, so for this thing, by default Spring Boot is providing one class called response entity. So this is the generic class actually. So dot okay. Okay, inside this okay, whatever the message that we are providing, that will be sent as a response, but still it is not the appropriate one. We have to create a appropriate response from our application. To do that, as I mentioned, there is, we created a DTO layer, right? So in the DTO layer, I'm just creating a one more class called general response. Okay, again it can be anything, but I'm creating a general response. Okay, so inside this response I'm creating a one variable called message, and this is like a I'm creating a one getter and setter here. You know what is getter and setter, right? Getter is for just getting the value, setter is for setting the value for the particular variable. I am just selecting this one, and this variable I am going to select as a private variable. Okay, so because as it is in encapsulation, I'm just going to create this private variable. Now this variable cannot be accessible anywhere in the application. Only this get message and set message can be accessible from anywhere in the application. Now I'm going to use the general response in this controller, and I'm going to use this general response, this one. Okay, so here general response dot set message, I'm mentioning like sample user response. Okay, so this is what I'm going to mention, and the response would be like this. And now the return has to be like this one I can use it like, okay, so now here also I can mention like response entity. This is the return type. You know, like in Java, whenever we want to return something, we have to mention the return type, right? So that's what I'm mentioning here. The same way we have to mention this one for other methods as well, but this is not the I'm just mentioning only for this method. For others we will do it later, but to know the response I need to start the application, because I just shut down the application when I stopped the previous live. Okay, so let me clear this one. Go to the Postman, and okay, to the Postman. Okay, so now in the Postman, let me send the request, because we have done the change only for the get API. So let me send the request. So can you see the appropriate response here? So this is how we have to send the response to the REST, in the REST API to the client. Okay, because if you are sending a just text message, means it cannot be able to parse by the front end applications. Okay, it is always best to have a appropriate structure in order to create a appropriate response. Okay, and also here as you can see here 200, okay, which is successful response. Okay, maybe we will not see here now. Can you see this 200 response in the Postman status code, right? So which means this is like a appropriate status code that we need to pass it from our application. In case if you want to send an error, we can use 400 status code or 500, whatever it may be, you can use it. But as of now, I am using a 200, okay, which is successful. But for the error scenario, any other error you want to throw or any error application is created, then it should throw the error with the appropriate error message. But the status code should be 400, okay, that we will see it later, like how we can do it. Fine. So now go to the source code. Now what we are going to do, we are going to connect our application with the database. Okay. So already we have done the basic implementation like this one. I think it's working fine. Because of this thing only our application is running. In case if we have any wrong configuration, our application will not run. For example, I am giving a wrong database name here. Okay. So now let me restart the application and you may see the error in the application startup. Let's see. Mostly we may get an error. Yes, we got the error here. Okay, because the error is, it's where it is throwing error. Okay, I am going to the first line of the error, because whenever there is an error happens, it is always must that we should read the error properly, otherwise we cannot understand. Okay, now the error is clearly, it shows it's like an unknown database, October 2020 something it's showing, which means, so if there is an error in the database connection, it would have thrown the error during the previous video itself. So now our application database connection is working fine, so we don't need to worry about all the database connections. So it is finished. Now only thing is we need to create the proper structure for our application. Okay, but before that, let me open a workbench here, and we have the table user product address. I'm having lots of table here, and this is not the MySQL tutorial, so I am not going to explain about how to create the table database and all these things. So I just, it's not a complex table as well. I'm just having a simple table like select start from user, and this user table is having only 4 columns like ID, name, email, password, and this ID is auto increment. As you can see here, this ID is auto increment. That's it. Apart from this, it does not have anything. Now for this table, I am going to create a model class. Okay, first I will create a model here. So model should have ID, name, email, password. Okay, so go to the model class. As you can see here, the package model is empty. We don't have create anything. So now right click and I am going to create a model class called user model. Okay, so then the reason why are we creating model is just to naming convention, we are using a model here. In some projects, some people may have the entity also. Okay, it is depends on their project requirement. And now we need to use the annotation called entity. To make this as an entity, we need to use this annotation called entity. If you can remember, for REST controller, we use annotation called controller, right? REST controller. The same way, in the model, we need to mention this entity, okay? And then we need to mention one more annotation called table. And here we need to mention the name here. The name is nothing but the actual table name, okay? Because somehow this model should connect with our database, right? So this is the actual table name, and the class name can be anything, okay? So to tell that user model is representation of this user table, that's what we are mentioning the name here, okay? So now come back to the field name. So here we can mention long, the ID, this is the column name which we have in the table. Next one is email, password, what is it? Name. So email, name, password. So here we can have a string and name and then password. That's it, okay? And then close, that's it, okay? So now as usual, we need to create a getter and setter, but only for the ID column we need to mention the annotation called ID, and we should add one more annotation also, which is nothing but, okay, so which is nothing but in this one, here we need to mention the generated value. I think it's strategy, I think so, yeah, strategy equal to generation type, I think identity, okay? So which mention like we don't need to provide the value, okay, which means whatever the value that we want to show it here, we don't need to provide the value, that will be automatically created. That's what we are mentioning, this identity. And apart from this, I don't need to do add any annotations. So now the last scenario is we need to just create a getter and setter. That's it. So now getter, select the field, and I am creating all the getter and setter for all the field with the one shot. Okay, and maybe this one I just move this one. In case whatever the variable you are mentioning here, if it is not able to connect with our database or table columns, it will throw the error immediately, okay? So whatever the column that we are having, it has to be properly created with our application, okay? Fine. So now let's go for our application. Okay, now the model class is created, that's it. Okay, we don't need to change anything here. In case if there is a change in the table, then we have to do the change here. For example, you are changing an email field into mail means in the database, then same thing we have to do it here as well, okay? So now go to our repository, which is called user repository. So user repository. Okay, so in the user repository it should be interface, it is not the class by the way. So interface, and it should extends with the JPA repository. Okay, so JPA repository, and this JPA repository, it should expect it's a entity class, sorry, which means it's a generic class actually. So we need to mention the class name, which is called user model, and then ID type, which is called long. ID type is nothing but the user model, whatever we are having here, this data type, right, that we need to mention in the place of second argument. That's it. Okay, then we should use this annotation called repository. That's it. Okay, so this is how we can complete the base model and repository package. As you can see here, it is not that much complicated, just using the user model. That's it. So this is how, and we can mention the column name. There is no business logic. When it comes to repository, it is also very simple to use. Okay, so now the last one is like we go to the service class. So we can create one service class called user service, and it has to be service, so no need to be add anything. Okay, so user service. Now in the user service you need to mention service. So this annotation will help us to make this class as a service. Okay, so now you may have doubt like we can't use any other annotations. Yes, you can use other annotations also, but to representation of this service we have to use these annotations. Here I think we can use component also, that annotation is also available, but it's the standard is always we have to use the service actually. Okay, so now we are going to create a method called get user list. Okay, so what this method will do, this gets all the users from the application. So which means public get all user means it has to be list, right? List means it will get all the user list. So and the response type is user model. That's it. Okay, and the list I need to import it, because generally I don't know why my Java package does not import IntelliJ is not importing the list. That's fine. Okay, so here first of all we need to import the repository. As I told in the previous video, whenever we want to execute any query, we have to use the we have to use the repository, right? Repository is responsible for executing a query. So now here we need to use this user repository and the object. Okay, generally we know in Java or any other languages, object means it is a lowercase of the class name. So the class name is user repository, and then object name is user repository. Okay, now here in our Spring Boot application we don't need to go with the normal Java flow, which means whenever we want to create an object in Java we have to go with like this, right? But here it is not the case actually. Okay, which means in the case, one second, in this Java application, in the Spring Boot application, one second, we have to use the auto wire. Okay, what this annotation will do, this will create an object for this user repository, and whenever we want to use this one we can use it without any issues. This is what the advantage of using the user Spring Boot application. Okay, so here using the object called user repository dot find all method, which is coming from the repository. Still now I never write any queries. As you can see here, I never write any queries, but this find all method will get all the data for me. So here I'm just returning a return find all method. That's it. Okay, so it will, what it will do, get all the data from user table. That's it. So we don't need to write any query, just using the JPA method we can able to get the data here. Okay, so now our service class is completed. Go to the controller class. So which means our business logic is completed. Now we have to call this method from the controller. So controller is responsible for to getting the request, right? So here in this place I will use this auto-while annotation. In this auto-while annotation I am going to use the same thing. What we have done for the repository in the service class, we have to use a user service with this one. So what this will do, this will create an object for the user service and we can use it. So here this one, right, here maybe I can use this one. I will remove this one. I can use return of user service dot get user list. Okay, so this will get all the user list, and as we all know, we don't need the maybe we can mention question mark, which can be anything, and the response has to be response. Okay, maybe for your understanding I am creating appropriate one, list of user model, but this is not the appropriate one. I will tell you how we can able to process this one. Okay, we can say like user list equal to user service dot get user list. Okay, and this user list I am just using a response entity. You know what is response entity? Response entity dot okay, we need to mention this object. This we can remove it. And this list I need to import in the application. Import java.util dot list. Okay, that's it. So now the error has gone. So what this will do, this will get all the users from the database and it returns as a response to the UI. That's it, which means the client, it will send the response. Okay, now just we will start the application and we will check how it works. So now as you can see here, we never write any SQL query or anything, just we are doing some basic configuration and we are starting our application. Our application is working fine, as you can see here. Now go to the Postman and we need to use this get method, get mapping. In terms of controller, no need to change anything. In the endpoint also we don't have any changes. Get user, send this request. As you can see here, I am getting all the data from the database. This data, whatever you are seeing, right, it is coming from the database. It is not from somewhere in this thing. Maybe I will show you, I am going to the real-time database. As you can see here, the first data is start from ID called 4, update test java@gmail.com. This is the password. Okay, generally we should not share the password. This is just as it is real time, just for learning purpose I'm just sharing, but in the real time we should not share the password in the response. Okay, fine. So now as you can see here, this is the data. It is coming from the database application. That's it. Okay, so this is how we can just perform the first API, which is called reading the data from our database, is completed. Can you see this one? We have this get API and this one is okay. So fine. So shall we move on to the next one, which is called creating the user. So now you want to perform the register user or you want to create the user. So whenever we want to perform the create user, we can use a post API. As I mentioned, if you want to receive the data, we have to go with the post mapping only. Okay, but how we can able to receive the data? Okay, so in order to receive the data, we have to use the annotation called request body. Again, we have to go with the annotation only. That's what, it's very simple. You don't need to worry about anything. Just mentioning the annotations, it does all these things for you. Okay, but now how are we going to receive the data? So if you can remember, generally, from the client side, we can have this JSON architecture, and here I can mention like name. This is the name, and we can mention like username. One second. This is the username that you want to pass it from the client, and then email you want to pass, and then you want to pass password. Okay, so this is the logic that you want to pass it here, and this is one. Okay, but now how we can able to receive the request in our application? So as you can see here, this name, email, password is the common one. Username and then email value, password value will be different. It can be anything, right? So common is like name, email, password. So now what we can do, we can create our own project class to bind this value, and using that variable, we can able to access the value, which means we have the DTO layer, right? In the DTO layer, I am going to create a class called user request. Okay, this user request, I am going to mention the 3 field, which is called email, and then name, and then password. Okay, and all these fields are going to string, right? I think I can create in a same line itself. Maybe I am doing this one. Okay, and one more thing, now I will create a getter and setter. You know what is getter and setter, right? Okay, and one more thing, when it comes to DTO layer, we don't need any annotations, because this DTO layer will not have any business logic. So we don't need any annotations. For example, if you see here, user request or general response, we never have any annotation, because this user request is not that DTO layer will not expect you to create annotations. Okay, now we need to mention object. It can be anything, but generally it's a small case of the class name. Okay, so now what happens is, whenever I am passing any request with the email and then name and password, automatically that will bind to this variable. This is the advantage of this one. So whenever using this annotation called request body with the user request, automatically that data binding will happen to the appropriate class. This is the advantage of using the request body. Okay, so now what I am going to do, I am going to create one more. I think we have the service method. In the service method, I am going to create one more method called public boolean create user, which is this one. Okay, and this create user will expect the request called user request, and then object would be user request, which means this method is also expecting the user request in order to create a user. And this one here, I am going to create a user model. If you can remember at the initial stage, maybe in the previous video, I mentioned this model class is specifically for to bind the data. If you want to read the data or if you want to create the data, then we have to go with this user model, right? So in this user model, I am creating a normal, the way how we are creating the object in the Java, right? Okay. So now we have to set the value for each column. So user dot set email, ID is not needed, ID is auto incremental. Set email, set password. Okay, and then we can say user dot set what is the name. Okay, yeah, now we have the three field. This three field has to be retrieved from the request, right? It will be in the, it's already in the request, so we need to just email actually in the same way. User request dot get password, user request dot get name, that's it. Okay, so this is how we can perform our email password name, which means we set the value for the user model. But this is not the one. As I mentioned, whenever we want to do any queries or whenever you want to perform any SQL queries, it is must that we should use repository, right? So here we can use this user repository, which we already auto wire in this class. Dot, there is a method called save. What this method will do, this will save the request immediately to our, it will insert the data in the MySQL table. That's what the main thing here. Okay, and then at the last we can go for return true. Okay, and one more thing, here we can use this try catch. What this try catch will do, one second, try catch, what this try catch will do, if any error happens, it just instead of shut down the application, it just catch this one. So here I am just going to this one, and if any error happens, it return the false. Okay, and here I am going to use this out. Generally we should not use this out, but as it is in a normal learning application, I'm just using, but we should not use this out here. And return true is going to, I will mention in the only in the try block. Okay, so here I will mention like e dot get message to understand the error, but generally we have to use this logger file to write the error, but exception I'm just using this is out to know this one. Okay, so what this will do, this is the method which helps us to create the user in the method. So that's it, we don't need to worry about insert query, insert into table name, values and all these things. By using the Spring Boot application, we can just trigger the method which performs these operations. Now go to our controller. In the controller, you can just call the service user service dot create user request. That's it. So this will create a user, create the user in the service. That's it. From here it goes to the service. Service will call the repository, and the repository will perform the insert action. That's it. Okay. So this is what that we have done here. So shall we move on to the next one, guys? I think yes. Oh, I used to this word because I used to take the training, no. So I used to call like, we shall we go for next topic and all these things, but we don't know it's a live. I'm just speaking like this. Okay, fine. Now go to the browser. Okay, I'm just checking whether how the live is going on. Okay, fine. I think we will go for next one. Right, I think we will go for next one. Okay, fine. Live is working. Okay, yes, we will go for one more thing. So now our post mapping is working fine, which means, sorry, we need to test it out, right? Fine. So let me restart the application. Same way we can do for update, we can do for delete also. That will be very easy, like put and delete. Maybe that update, maybe we need to write some more logic, but delete is very easy. And if you want to retrieve the user based on the ID, that logic also we can do it now. Okay, fine. Now go to the Postman. We can go for create user, right? Okay, create user. As you can see here, we don't need to change anything, just changing the post is enough. Now go to the body, and here it's a thing, we should select the raw here. We should not use any other thing. Here we should select this raw, and instead of text it should be JSON / application JSON. Okay, and now here open bracket close bracket, and we have to pass the data exactly. It has to match with our request. In case if you are not passing the data which can be matched with the request, then it cannot be it will not be inserted, or you may get an error here. So which is called email, and next one is name, next one is password. Okay, so these are all the fields that I'm using here. So email, I will mention like October 20 at gmail.com. Is it okay? -1. Okay. Name I'm giving October 20 -1. Password also I'm giving PWD. Only this thing I'm adding. Okay. So this is the data that I'm giving. And as you can see at the endpoint, we don't have any change. Only I'm changing the post API. Let me send the request. Yeah, it is working fine. Oh my god, how it is showing this one? We didn't change anything. This is very worst, guys. Okay, so I think it should not show this response. It has to give me the appropriate response actually. Okay, but however, I think the data is created. Okay, first we will check whether data is created or not. Okay, so before insertion we are having a 28. Let me execute this one. As you can see here, it is having 29. So which is working fine. The name is October 20-1. Email is October 20-1 at gmail.com. Password is October 20-1. PWD. Let me expand it. Yeah, PWD. So our insertion is working fine, but the problem is we are not sending the appropriate response. I also didn't notice. So you people also didn't tell anything. So here I will mention like general response. I think one more thing, we have to do with the try catch. In Spring Boot application, we have the one concept called exception handler. I think exception handler. So what this exception handler will do, wherever the error occurs in our application, it will be handled in a single single place. We don't need to go on each and every place to handle the error. Just by handle the using the appropriate annotation called handler advice, it just handles the error in the application in a centralized place. Okay, but as of now I'm not going to do, I'm just telling this one. Okay, so here we can mention like okay, yeah, here I will mention like general response. Okay, so here if it is success response, I mention like set message. I can mention like user is created. Okay, so this is the one. Next one is from here I will mention like general response. The same way when it comes to catch, we don't need to do this one. Here I will mention like this. Okay, and yeah, we need to send the response, right? Return. Here it has to be return. But when it comes to catch, that is not the okay, because as I mentioned, if it is error, we have to throw the 400 bad request, right? Status code is 400. So for this one, we are using this body, which is one. Yeah. Oh, okay. Now the last scenario is here. We need to mention the response entity, which is as per the Java. We need to mention the this one, right? So this one. Okay. So this is how we can perform the create user in our application. Okay. So now we need to restart it. I think one more thing we can do, one more scenario also. Instead of return false, right, I can use throw as per throw e. But when we are mentioning throw e, we have to mention throws exception also. Okay, this would be the appropriate, because we don't want to go with the traditional thing. We can throw the error here, which if any error happens, it just throws here. But why? Why it is saying like this? Generally it will work, right? Second, maybe is it error? I don't know why. Somehow it's got confused me. Okay, fine. Maybe I will just using the same thing. E dot get message. Fine. Okay, so this one will throw the error from here to this place controller, and where is this one? Yeah, so here it is working fine. Okay, so now what happens is like this thing is not needed here, it has to be e dot get message. That's it. Okay, so now whatever the error comes, it will be appended to the message and it goes to the appropriate response. If it is successful, then it gives me this user is created. That's it. Okay, so maybe go for this our application. I am giving a one more request with the 2. I am just changing only the 2 here. I didn't change anything. Send the request. Can you see this one? Appropriate one. Messages user is created. This is how we have to send the response to the client. We should not send a normal text message. Okay. So 200 okay, which is working fine here. Okay. Now shall we go for delete? So delete means by using the ID, maybe okay, not delete. First we will see the okay. We will go for the previous one, which is called the localhost. Once again, I will show you what we are going to do. Colon 8080 slash user, enter. Okay, so now we are having this many users, right? So I don't want to see all of this one. I want to see only one guy. So which means by what I can do now, /4 means it has to show only that user. It will not show all the user details, right? So now if I remove this 4, I can able to get all the details, but I want to see only one guy. Okay, so for this thing we have to create a one more endpoint. It should be with the get mapping only again. Okay, so now go to this one. You understood, right? Instead of getting all the users, I want to retrieve the user by the ID of the particular user, and if that user is not available, it has to throw the error. Okay, so now for this one I'm just copy paste this line and I will remove this one. Okay, so again here what I'm going to mention, the endpoint is going to be like this, user ID. So user ID. So now this line number 41 will help us to handle user/user ID. This is what the thing here. So this is not a variable name or this is not a constant one. This is kind of dynamically binding the value from the URL. But now how to access this one in the Java code? This is annotation is fine. This will bind the value, but how we can able to access it? So in order to access this user ID value, we have to use the annotation called path variable. Path variable means whatever the available in the path variable that we can use it, and it has to be long user ID. User. The name has to be same, exactly same like this. If you are not giving the proper name, then it will not work. We have to use another way is also there. But generally, if you want to use this variable as this in the path variable, it has to be the same name. Even the as Java case sensitive, whatever that letter is in caps, it has to be caps like this only actually. Okay. Now now the controller logic is fine. We have to go with the service logic. We will create a business logic. Okay, so now in the service we have to create one more method which will accept this ID and it gets user details based on the ID. So for this thing I'm just copy paste this one. It's not needed. Okay, so here we can say get user. The name is, I'm going to change the name as get user by ID. This is the name I'm mentioning here. And as we know, it will not be the multiple details because list of user model by the meaning itself, by the list itself we will understand it is the multi users. But when it comes to ID, it's a moreover it is a primary key. Primary key means it should be unique, right? And in order to get the data, we can use the default method called find by ID. This is the advantage of using the Spring Boot repository. So whenever we are using a Spring Boot repository find by ID, we don't need to write any query like select star from ID and all these things. Just by using the ID, we can just get the value. It should be long of user ID. Okay, the same argument we will use it here. That's it. Okay, fine. Okay, and the last scenario here. Okay, let me remove the comment here. Okay, the last scenario is if you see the return type of this find by ID, it is optional. Can you see the return type? It is optional. This is not the this is Java 8 feature. Optional is specifically for to handle the null pointer exception. If you don't know this optional, maybe this will not be easy to understand. So here what I'm going to do is this option is helpful to identify whether the user is exist or not. Okay. So in this scenario, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just mention dot or else throw. Either you can throw the error if this does not have the data, or you can assign the data. So now I am going to throw the error if it does not have the data. If it has the data, I will show you one more thing. Okay, now we will handle the error scenario. Okay, so in the error scenario, I am going to use a lambda expression. So new exception. Okay, here I will mention like no data, we can say no data, instead of no data we can say no user found. Okay, so this is the error that I want to use it, but it should be throws exception, because whenever we are returning error it should be throws exception. Okay, so now we will mention this one into user model, which means if data exists it will be assigned to the user model, if data is not exist it will throw the error. Okay, now return user model, that's it. Okay, so this is how we can handle the user based on the ID here. Okay, so now let me restart the application to handle this one. Now you understood it. Okay, but last scenario, oh, okay, wait, go to the controller, we have to call the method, right? So the last one is we have to call the method get user by ID, mention the user ID, that's it. So this will help us to get the ID, but this is not the proper one. We need to use this, we need to remove the list, because this is a single object here, so we don't need the list here. We can just mention the user, that's it. So get user by ID, yeah, okay, unhandled exception, so we can use try catch here. Okay, try catch, you know what the catch will do. This is the catch layer. I'm just copying this one, I will put it this place, and I will move this code to this place, and this general response we have to put here, because in the above method does not expect the general response, it just expects the only the user data, so we can keep it like this, and everything is working fine, I think so. Let me restart the application and we will see whether how it works. Okay, fine. Now go to our postman, man. Okay. Okay, now I am using a localhost /user, which gives me all the user. Now in the same URL /4 enter. Can you see this one? Only that particular user I can able to get it. The same way, if we go to Workbench, I am giving a 6th user. I can able to get only the 6th guy. It will not give you, other users. Okay, I am giving a wrong user, which this ID is not exist in my table. I will get the error. Can you see this one? No user found. So I am getting the error, which is working fine. And one more thing, we are getting a 400 bad request, which means, oh sorry, you didn't see, right? Okay, yeah, 400 bad request, which means we are getting a appropriate error code, which is working fine as well. So now go to this place, and which is maybe I am giving a proper data now. Okay, so now we are getting this one. When it comes to status code, which is 200, okay, so our application is working fine in terms of ID. By passing the ID also it is working fine. Okay, so now we will go for the delete mapping. Meanwhile, if you have any doubts or anything, if you are in the live, just put the command, I will help you. In the chat also I can able to reply. One more thing, like if you are watching after the live, also you can just post in the comments, I will help you. 1 second guys, I will go to the live. Fine, okay, so now I can go for next implementation, which means IntelliJ. Yeah, so next thing is we are going to delete the data. Okay, so when it comes to delete the data, you know what is deleting, right? Which means by passing the ID it will delete the data. So for this thing, what we are going to do, again same, go to the service. You know how we can able to get the data using the ID, right? With the same implementation we can delete the user also. So to do that, I'm just copy paste, maybe I will change the method name, which is called delete by user ID. Okay, but when it comes to delete, we don't need to return anything, just put the void is enough, because while deleting it just removes everything from the DB. Okay, and everything has to be same, you don't need to worry about anything. Only thing is here we need to use repository, because now we are going to perform some query. So whenever there is an action to perform query, it is must that we should use repository. So repository dot delete by ID. What this will do, by providing the appropriate ID, it will just performs the error here. Sorry, it just performs the delete here. So now here I can mention no, delete is enough. Delete model, user model. Okay, yeah, sorry, this is on. So here what we are performing is like by passing the user model object, it performs the delete operation. That's it. Okay, So this one will get the data. If the data is not available, it will remove the user. Sorry, it just throws the error. If it exists, we are deleting the user. That's it. Okay. Apart from this, I am not going to do anything. Now go to the controller. Okay, and we have the delete mapping already. So what I can do, I can just copy paste this logic here, and again we can use either path variable or you can use whatever you want. Here I will mention the path variable which we have done it for this one. The same thing, copy, go to the this one, and delete is again the path variable. Whatever we have done for the previous method just now before, all these things I am going to mention in this place as well. Okay, that's it. So now the last one is, this one is not needed. It's going to be a delete by user ID. Okay. So here we need to mention this user ID. That's it. Okay, and user is deleted is the message that we want to pass it to the client. And oh, okay, yeah. The reason why it is throwing the error is because we have to mention the appropriate return type, delete mapping, and everything is working fine. I think we don't need to bother about anything. So this is general response, delete by user ID, user is deleted, and this is also fine. It is also fine actually. Okay, and any other thing we need to mention? No. Okay, yes. Okay, we will check this one as well. Now let me restart the server. You understood, right? So if you can understand the previous logic, it will not take that much time to understand. Which means here also what we are doing is we are just passing the ID, and if the data is exist, it just deletes the data. If the data is not exist, it just throws the error. That's it. Okay. So now we will. I think the application is started. Go to the postman. Go to the postman. Select the post. Delete. It is must that we should use delete. But make sure we have to check one more time. Yeah, it's a delete mapping. Okay, user/6 user. Okay, I am opening one more tab to get all the users to check everything. Okay, so send this one. As you can see here, I am going to delete the first user called ID with the 4. Okay, so now go to this one. I am giving up ID called 4. I want to delete this guy. So in order to delete this one, we need to use this delete mapping. So send this request. Okay, we are getting the proper error message called user is deleted. Now go to the user, which retrieves all the data, right? Send this request, and as you can see here, the fourth guy is removed from the database. Okay, that's it. So now shall we do one more thing? We will give like the ID which is not exist. I am giving a 40. User ID with the 40 is not exist in my database. So let me give this request. No user found, we are getting error. So the error is working fine. And when it comes to status code, which is giving 400, which is also working fine. Shall we do one more success deletion? So I am giving a 6th user. I think we are not having 5. 6th user sending the request, and the user is deleted, which is also working fine. And here we are having a 200, okay, which is also working fine. That's it. Okay. So now we created the record, we selected the record, by the ID. Now the last one is we are going to update. Okay, so the last scenario, go to the service method. As you know, the logic can be written only in the service method. The update. So when it comes to update, it has some more logic as well, because it is not like update will happen for all the field. For example, update user by ID, because update means whatever the field that I want, only that particular field I can able to update. I don't want to update for all the field. For example, if I want to update my name, I can update my name, but the email and password should be same. The same way, if I want to update my email, the name and other field should be same. We don't need to update all the field. So for this thing, we have to appropriately set the field for the column, which means now as usual, first we need to get the user, because update can be done only for the existing user, correct? So the first line is always fine. We are getting the user by the ID. Now here we have to write some if condition, and one more thing, update has to happen for the any field with the ID. So we should not use single field, we should use this user request, which means whatever that field that they want to update, they can pass it to the user request. Here we need to mention this ID here. Okay, it's not user model, it should be user request, and it should be okay. And one more thing, this user request does not have the ID, as we didn't create it now. Long ID I'm mentioning here. generate getter setter id. Yeah, so now it is created. Maybe I move this field to the top. Generally in the standard we have to put the field in the top one. Okay, fine guys, once again. Okay, fine. Okay, go back to our application. Now here we need to mention this get user ID, right? Get user ID. Yeah, get ID, which gets the data from the database. Okay, now we have to write a condition. If I'm using one condition which is called objects dot non null, which means it should not be null and it should not be empty as well. And here I can mention like user request dot get email. The same way I can mention like user request get password. Okay, and when the email or password is not empty, the same way we can set for name also. Okay, you understood, right? Whatever the field that they are passing which is not empty, only that field can be updatable. So here we can select user model dot set email user request dot get email, and if they want to set the password, set password user request dot get password. We should not use else if condition. You know why? I don't tell the reason. You can just put it in the chat. You know why we can't use else if here. We should use only if. Okay, and we should not use else also. Okay, in this type of conditions. And user model dot set. I think why are we writing one more time? It should be name, right? Yeah. I think I have written wrongly. Name user request dot get name. That's it. Okay, so this is how we can perform this operation here. Okay, so now what's happening is like what we are doing here. It means whenever we are performing, we are sending the data accordingly. It has to update the value to the variable, which means only for the email, only for the password, only for the name. It just appends. And the last scenario, we need to use this user repository dot save and the user model. It just saves the updatable. That's it. Okay. And when it comes to user model, we don't need to update. I'm just mentioning a void. I don't want to throw I don't want to throw anything return type. I just want, if any error happens, it just throws the error. Now go to the where we need to go, controller, right? Yes, update na. So update means I'm just copy paste. We need to modify and update. Okay, and it should be user request. When it comes to update thing, we have to use this request body because they will pass any data. So this one, I think everything is fine. Anything user is updated. Yeah, this one we need to mention. Okay, I think I don't want to change anything. Everything is fine. That's it. Okay, and here also. Okay, I think this is also not needed. That is fine actually. Okay, so now let me restart the application to check the output. That's it, guys. So this is how we can perform this one. Yeah, okay, so it is working fine. Okay, sorry, which means the application is working fine. Now go to the Postman and we will perform the update. So go for update means it put. Okay, and for the which user we have to go to update means, let me send the request. Maybe which guy? Okay, for the 7th guy, I want to update the password because he does not have any password here. So again, maybe I'm just copying the request, that object, go to this one, and as we know, we don't need this one. Go to the body, raw, paste it. We should select the JSON. Okay, I don't want to name and email and name. I don't want to update. Okay, so password I will mention like password you update password. Okay, so this is the one. I'm going to update only for the, sorry, I'm going to update only the password for the 7th user. Let me do it. Oh, we are getting a user is updated. Now go to this one, send the request. As you can see here, 7th guy, email and password is exist same thing. Only the password is getting updated. Now we will check one more thing in the database also. So this is a 7th guy. As you can see here, he does not have the password. Let me refresh the query. As you can see here, the 7th guy is having the password which is working fine. So shall we do it like email also? Now we are going to update only email, but which user we can do it at? So which guy we can update it? Maybe the name we will update because all these guys having same name, right? For the 8th guy, I am going to update the name, not the email, update the name for the 8th guy. But this is the wrong one, guys. Oh, sorry, it's get right. I just confused with the request. Okay, yeah, okay. 8th, okay. For the 8th guy, I am going to update the name. Okay, so name, I mentioned like new name is the name I am going to provide for this 8th guy. So let me send the request 200, okay, which is updated. For the 8th guy, it should show the new name, yeah, which is working fine. And the 8th guy does not have a password. Okay, so let me refresh it. Okay, so 8th guy getting a new name and nothing is changed, everything is working perfectly. That's it. Okay, so shall we test only the last scenario, only the email, because we tested the password, we tested the name. The last scenario, I don't know which guys we can able to update it. Okay, I will update this 9th guy email. Okay, list2@gmail.com, right? 9th guy I will update it. So go to this request 9th guy. I need to mention the ID and his email, right? Email is and I will mention like 9th@gmail.com. This is the mail that I am going to update. What is the existing email for him? 9th guy is having a list2@gmail.com. Let me send the request. Yeah, it is updated. We got the message. Let me refresh the database. As you can see here, yes, it is working fine. 9th@gmail.com. So only that mail is getting updated. Other fields are remains same. Okay, so this is how we can perform the update for the user with the ID. Okay, so I hope you guys understand what is the Spring Boot application, how the REST API can be developed, and how we can able to connect the database and all these things. And if you have any queries or any doubts or any clarification, you can just post in the comments. Make sure don't forget to subscribe. Okay, thank you. Bye bye. We'll see you in the next live with a different